Commander Hyun-Ki stared at the screen in disbelief. The numbers didn't make sense. Objects the size of small cities were moving through space toward Earth, and they were moving fast. "Da-yoon, check the sensors again," he said to his second-in-command. Lieutenant Da-yoon was the best tech officer on Seoul Orbital Station, but even she looked confused. "Sir, I've checked 3 times. The readings are correct. 57 massive objects coming from the direction of Alpha Centauri. They'll reach our solar system in 6 hours. Technician Wu Jin looked up from his console. His face was pale. "Commander, these aren't asteroids or space junk. They're moving in formation. Someone is controlling them." Hyun-Ki felt his stomach drop. In his 20 years of space monitoring, he had never seen anything like this. He grabbed the red phone that connected directly to Earth Defense Command. "Admiral Jae-ho, we have a problem." Down on Earth, Admiral Jae-ho was having his morning coffee when the call came. He was a calm man who had seen many crises, but Hyun-Ki's voice made him put down his cup. "What kind of problem, Commander?" "The kind that means we're about to have visitors, sir, and they're bringing a lot of ships." Within an hour, every military base on Earth was on high alert. Scientists pointed their telescopes toward the approaching objects. What they saw made them gasp. The ships were like nothing humans had ever built. They looked alive, with curved surfaces that seemed to pulse like breathing. Strange lights moved across their hulls in patterns that looked almost like writing. Dr. Min Seo, Earth's top expert on the possibility of alien life, was called to the main command center. She had spent her career wondering if this day would come. Now it was here, and she felt excited and terrified at the same time. "They're definitely artificial," she told the gathered military leaders. "But look at this design. It's not like our ships at all. We build with straight lines and sharp angles. These look organic, like they grew instead of being built." Ambassador Tae-young, Earth's top diplomat, studied the images. If they wanted to talk, wouldn't they have sent a message by now? As if hearing his words, every radio and television on Earth suddenly went quiet. Then a voice spoke in broken English, mixed with sounds no human throat could make. "Small world beings, we are Valkyrian Empire. Your planet will join our rule. You have 3 of your sun movements to surrender all weapons and leaders. If you refuse, your species will end. This message will repeat." The message played again in different languages, but always with the same terrible meaning. The aliens weren't here to make friends. War Marshal Thexvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the small blue planet ahead. This was his 48th conquest, and he expected it to be like all the others. The species would panic. Their leaders would try to negotiate, and within days they would surrender to Valkyrian superiority. His body was covered in a hard shell that shimmered like crystal. 6 arms moved constantly over control surfaces, while his large compound eyes saw in spectrums humans couldn't imagine. Like all Valkyrians, he was connected to his soldiers through chemical signals that let them share thoughts and emotions. "Scanner, report," he commanded in the clicking language of his people. "The small beings have approximately 8 billion individuals," reported his intelligence officer. "They have achieved basic spaceflight but have not left their star system. Their technology is primitive. They use explosive chemicals for energy and build with dead materials." Thexvar felt satisfied. This would be easy. The Valkyrians had perfected the art of conquest. First, they would study the planet's communications to understand the local culture. Then they would send fear chemicals into the atmosphere to make the population easier to control. Finally, they would demonstrate their weapons and wait for surrender. But as his scouts studied Earth's communications, they found something strange. "War Marshal," his communications specialist said, sounding confused. "These beings are unusual." "How so?" "They don't have one leader. They have hundreds of different groups, and many of these groups disagree with each other. They fight wars among themselves while also creating art and music together. They keep animals as companions. And sir, they seem to think our arrival is interesting rather than terrifying. On Earth, the news of alien contact had spread everywhere. But instead of mass panic, something unexpected was happening. People were gathering in the streets not to flee but to watch the sky. Social media filled with jokes about the aliens' poor grammar. Scientists worked around the clock to learn everything they could about the visitors. 16-year-old Ji Woo was streaming his video game when the alien message played on his computer. His viewers watched him pause the game and listen to the ultimatum. Did they just threaten to end humanity? He asked his audience. That's so dramatic. And did anyone else notice they said 3 sun movements? Do they mean days? That's adorable. They're trying to sound scary, but they don't even know how we measure time. His stream exploded with comments. People weren't afraid. They were making jokes, creating memes, and treating the whole thing like entertainment. Back on Seoul Orbital Station, Commander Hyun-ki watched the alien fleet take positions around Earth. The ships were beautiful in a terrifying way. They moved, without any visible engines, flowing through space like giant fish swimming through water. "Sir," Da-eun said, "we're getting reports from all over Earth. People aren't evacuating the cities. They're having parties." "Parties?" "Yes, sir. In Tokyo, someone projected a giant welcome message toward the alien ships. In London, they're selling t-shirts that say, 'I survived first contact and all I got was this lousy ultimatum.' And in New York, someone started a betting pool on whether the aliens like pizza." Hyun-ki rubbed his forehead. Humans were strange even to other humans, but this was beyond strange. Any normal species would be hiding in bunkers right now. War Marshal Thexivar was having the same problem. His fear chemicals weren't working. Usually, a few drops of Valkyrian terror scent in the atmosphere would have the local population too scared to resist. But these humans seemed immune. Even worse, they were studying the chemicals and posting analysis online. "Sir," his science officer reported, "the humans have already figured out that our fear chemicals are harmless to them. One of their scientists called them interesting pheromones with possible therapeutic applications." "Therapeutic?" "They think our terror scent might be useful for treating their mental illnesses, sir." Thexivar felt something he had never experienced in 47 previous conquests: confusion. These humans were supposed to be terrified. Instead, they were trying to figure out if alien chemicals could help with depression. His communication officer brought worse news. "War Marshal, the humans are sending us messages." "Surrender terms?" "No, sir. Invitations." "What?" "Dinner invitations, sir. Also requests for interviews, offers to show us something called tourist attractions, and 17 marriage proposals." Thexivar looked at the small blue planet spinning peacefully below his fleet. For the first time in his military career, he wasn't sure what to do next. These humans weren't following the script. They were supposed to be afraid, not curious. They were supposed to surrender, not invite him to dinner. On Earth, Admiral Jae-ho was having his own problems. His military advisors wanted to prepare for war, but the civilian population was treating the aliens like interesting guests who had made a rude first impression. "Admiral," his aide reported, "the President of Korea wants to know if we should prepare a formal welcome ceremony. The Prime Minister of Japan is asking if the aliens have dietary restrictions. And sir, someone in Australia has started a crowdfunding campaign to build the aliens a gift basket." Jae-ho looked out the window at the alien ships hanging in Earth's sky like deadly Christmas ornaments. Humanity was about to face its first interstellar war, and his species was planning a welcome party. He had a feeling this wasn't going to go the way anyone expected. Dr. Min Seo checked her equipment one more time as the shuttle approached the Valkyrian flagship. She was part of Earth's first diplomatic team, along with Ambassador Tae Young and a small group of experts. Everyone was nervous except engineer Kyung-ho, who kept talking excitedly about alien technology. "Do you think they use antimatter engines?" he asked for the 10th time. "Or maybe some kind of gravity manipulation? Oh, what if they've figured out how to bend space-time?" "Kyung-ho," Ambassador Tae Young said patiently, "we're not here as tourists. These beings threaten to destroy humanity. Try to remember that." But Kyung-ho was already staring out the window at the alien ship they were approaching. It was massive, easily 10 kilometers long, and it seemed to be breathing. The hull expanded and contracted in a slow rhythm, and lights moved across its surface like blood through veins. "That's not metal," he whispered. "It's some kind of living material. How do they grow ships instead of building them?" Pilot Yunji was trying to dock their shuttle with the alien vessel, but it wasn't easy. The Valkyrian ship didn't have a normal docking port. Instead, part of the hull opened like a mouth, revealing a passage that looked disturbingly organic. "Well," she said with a nervous laugh, "I guess we're being swallowed." The inside of the Valkyrian ship was unlike anything humans had ever seen. The corridors curved and twisted like intestines, lit by a soft blue light that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Strange smells filled the air, not bad smells, but definitely not human. War Marshal Thexvar waited for them in what might have been a meeting room, though it looked more like the inside of a giant shell. He was accompanied by 2 other Valkyrians and several floating devices that were probably weapons. When the humans entered, Thexvar began his intimidation display. He rose to his full height of 3 meters, his crystal shell gleaming. His 6 arms moved in threatening gestures while his compound eyes fixed on each human in turn. The floating weapons hummed with energy. Then he released his fear chemicals. The pheromones filled the room like invisible fog. They were designed to trigger pure terror in any intelligent being, to make enemies surrender without a fight. Thexvar had used them on 47 different species, and they had never failed. But the humans just looked around curiously. "Interesting scent," Dr. Minseo said, pulling out a small device to take air samples. "It's definitely organic. Some kind of complex protein chain, I think. The molecular structure is fascinating." Kyung-ho was staring at the floating weapons with obvious excitement. "Are those plasma cannons? How do you keep the energy contained without visible magnetic fields? And that ship design, do you grow your technology from living organisms?" Ambassador Tae-young stepped forward and bowed politely. "War Marshal Thexvar, thank you for agreeing to meet with us. We hope we can find a peaceful solution to our current situation." Thexvar felt confused. The humans should be terrified. They should be begging for mercy. Instead, they were taking scientific measurements and asking technical questions. His translator device spoke in the clicking Valkyrian language, then switched to English. "You will surrender your weapons and submit to Valkyrian rule. Your species will be integrated into our empire." "That's a very generous offer," Ambassador Tae-young replied. "But we'd like to discuss alternatives. Perhaps we could arrange a cultural exchange instead." "Cultural exchange?" Thexvar's translator struggled with the concept. "Yes, we could learn from each other. Your biotechnology is obviously very advanced. In return, we could share our knowledge of, well, various things." Engineer Kyung-ho couldn't contain himself anymore. "Please, you have to tell me how you grow ships. Do you use some kind of genetic programming? How do you control the growth process? Can you make the ships repair themselves?" Thexvar looked at his science officer, who communicated through chemical signals that roughly translated to, "What is wrong with these beings?" Dr. Minseo was still collecting air samples. "The pheromone concentration is decreasing. Are you releasing these chemicals continuously, or was that a single burst? They don't seem to be toxic to humans, but they might have medical applications." "Medical applications?" Thexvar asked. "Well, they're clearly designed to affect brain chemistry. If we could understand how they work, we might be able to help people with anxiety disorders or depression." Pilot Yunji had been examining the room's organic architecture. "This is amazing. The walls are alive, aren't they? Do they grow around the internal systems, or do you program them to form specific shapes?" The Valkyrian delegation exchanged more chemical signals. This was not going according to plan. The humans were supposed to be cowering in fear, not analyzing their ship design and asking for technical specifications. Thexvar decided to try a different approach. He activated a holographic display showing the destruction of previous worlds that had refused to surrender. Cities burning, populations fleeing, entire civilizations reduced to ash. "This is the fate of species that resist Valkyrian rule," he announced. The humans watched the hologram with obvious interest. "Incredible visual resolution," Kyung-ho said. "Is this real-time imaging or some kind of recorded data? The detail level is amazing." Ambassador Tae-young studied the images more seriously. "These are records of actual battles?" "Yes. 47 worlds have joined our empire. Those who surrendered quickly were allowed to survive. Those who resisted were eliminated. I see. Tae-young nodded thoughtfully. And what happened to the survivors? Are they happy as part of your empire? This was another question Thexavar hadn't expected. Happiness wasn't really a concept in Velkarian culture. Beings either served efficiently or they didn't. They serve, he said finally. But are they content? Do they enjoy their lives? Do they have families, create art, pursue personal interests? Dr. Minseo looked up from her samples. That's a good point. What's daily life like in your empire? How do you handle different cultural needs and preferences? Thexavar felt more confused than ever. He was trying to demonstrate Velkarian power and superiority, but the humans kept asking questions about quality of life and personal fulfillment. His communication officer sent him a chemical message. Sir, we're receiving thousands of transmissions from the planet's surface. Surrender offers? No, sir. More dinner invitations. Also questions about your biology, requests for interviews, and something called fan art, showing you and other Velkarians in what appear to be romantic situations with humans. Thexavar's shell changed color slightly, which was the Velkarian equivalent of a blush. Meanwhile, Engineer Kyung-ho had moved closer to examine one of the floating weapons. Is it safe to look at this? I'm just so curious about the energy containment system. Do not touch Velkarian weapons, Thexavar commanded. Oh, I won't touch it. I just want to understand how it works. We're still using primitive projectile weapons and chemical explosives. This level of energy manipulation could revolutionize our technology. Dr. Minseo joined him. The medical applications alone would be incredible. If we could understand how you manipulate matter at the molecular level, we could cure diseases, repair genetic damage, maybe even extend human lifespan. Ambassador Tae-young cleared his throat. War Marshal, perhaps we could arrange a longer cultural exchange. Our scientists would love to learn from your technology, and in return we could share our own discoveries. Your species has nothing to offer the Velkarian Empire, Thexavar replied, but he sounded less certain than before. Well, we have developed some interesting things, Tae-young said modestly. Music, literature, cuisine, various forms of entertainment. We've also made progress in mathematics, physics, and philosophy. Pilot Yoonji laughed. Don't forget coffee. I bet they've never had coffee. What is coffee? Asked one of the other Velkarians, speaking for the first time. It's a beverage, Dr. Minseo explained. It has a stimulating effect on human brain chemistry. Some people say it's what makes human civilization possible. The Velkarians exchanged more chemical signals. Their databases contained information about thousands of conquered species, but none had ever offered to share recreational beverages during surrender negotiations. War Marshal Thexavar made a decision that would change galactic history. You will return to your planet, he announced. We will consider your proposals. As the human delegation prepared to leave, Kyung-ho called back over his shoulder. If you change your mind about that technology sharing, we'd love to show you how we build things too. It's probably primitive compared to yours, but we've come up with some interesting solutions to engineering problems. After the humans left, Thexavar stood alone in his command chamber, trying to understand what had gone wrong. The fear chemicals had failed. The demonstration of power had failed. Even the threat of total annihilation had failed. Instead of surrendering, the humans had offered him coffee. His science officer approached with a chemical question that roughly meant, "What are your orders, War Marshal?" Thexavar looked out at the small blue planet spinning below his fleet. For 47 conquests, he had followed the same successful pattern, but Earth wasn't following the pattern at all. Prepare detailed scans of their civilization, he ordered. I need to understand these humans before we can defeat them. But deep in his mind, a small voice was asking a question he had never asked before. What if defeat wasn't the only option? Captain Sunho received the emergency transmission while his patrol ship was docked at Luna Base. Admiral Jae-ho's voice came through the speakers with grim authority. All defense units, this is Admiral Jae-ho. The aliens have rejected our diplomatic offers. As of 800 hours, we are at war. Sunho looked at his crew. Communications Officer Han Newell was barely 22, fresh out of the academy. Strategic Analyst Bora had more experience, but she had never planned for a battle against technology they didn't understand. "What are our orders, sir?" Han Newell asked. Sunho checked his display. Earth's defense fleet consisted of 43 ships designed for patrol duty and asteroid mining. They were about to face an alien armada that had conquered 47 worlds. "We're going to do what humans do best," he said. "We're going to be unpredictable." War Marshal Thexvar had given his fleet simple orders. Demonstrate overwhelming force until the humans surrendered. He expected the battle to last less than an hour. The first surprise came when the human ships didn't retreat. Instead of fleeing to safe distance, they charged straight toward the Valkyrian fleet. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the human vessels are approaching at maximum speed. They appear to be singing." "Singing?" "Yes, sir. They're broadcasting. Audio on all frequencies. Some kind of rhythmic vocalizations with instrumental accompaniment." Thexvar listened to the transmission. The sounds made no sense to Valkyrian ears, but they had a strange energy that seemed to affect his crew's concentration. Captain Sunho's voice came through the static. "All ships, remember the plan. Play the music loud and hit them fast." 4. Earth. The human fleet scattered in all directions, moving in patterns that defied military logic. Some ships flew upside down, others spun while firing. One pilot was broadcasting cooking recipes while launching missiles. Bora had suggested the chaotic approach after studying the alien formations. "They move in perfect coordination," she'd explained. "Their computers probably predict our actions, based on standard military tactics. But what if we don't use standard tactics?" The Valkyrian targeting systems struggled to lock onto ships that seemed to change direction randomly. When they did hit a human vessel, the crew would broadcast jokes and encouragement to the other ships even as their ship was dying. "Target acquired," reported the pilot of Earth defense ship Incheon, just before a Valkyrian beam weapon cut through his hull. "Tell my wife I love her, and tell the aliens they have terrible aim." His ship exploded, but the wreckage continued forward, guided by its dying computer system, and crashed into a Valkyrian destroyer. Thexvar watched in confusion as more human ships deliberately sacrificed themselves. This wasn't retreat or surrender. It was a completely new form of warfare. "War Marshal," his science officer reported, "we're detecting unusual energy signatures from the destroyed human vessels." "What kind of energy?" "Unknown, sir. But it's interfering with our ship systems." The energy was actually the result of engineer Kyung-ho's last-minute modification. He had rigged the human ships to broadcast every piece of information they collected about Valkyrian technology, just before being destroyed. "If we're going to lose ships anyway," he had reasoned, "at least we can learn something from each loss." On a Luna base, Sergeant Dong Min watched the battle through the observation dome. His unit was trapped on the moon with no way to retreat, but he wasn't planning to surrender either. "Sir," Private Minho called out, "the aliens are landing troops outside the base." Dong Min looked at his 23 soldiers. They had basic weapons and limited ammunition. The Valkyrian landing force had advanced armor and energy weapons. "Any suggestions?" he asked. Corporal Ji-won raised her hand. "My sister's a music producer. She always said K-pop was taking over the world. Maybe it's time to test that theory." It sounded crazy, but Dongmin was out of conventional options. "Do it." Ji-won connected her personal music player to the base's external speaker system and selected her favorite playlist. The powerful speakers, designed for emergency communications across the lunar surface, began broadcasting Korean pop music at maximum volume. The effect on the Valkyrian troops was immediate and dramatic. Their coordinated advance faltered as soldiers began stumbling and falling. Some dropped their weapons and clutched their heads. "It's working," Minho shouted. "The music is messing with their brain signals." Dr. Min Seo, monitoring from Earth, quickly understood what was happening. The Valkyrians used chemical and electrical signals to coordinate their thoughts and actions. The rhythmic patterns and emotional content of human music were creating interference in their neural networks. "All units," she broadcast, "play music, any music. The louder and more emotional, the better." Across the solar system, human defenders began broadcasting everything from classical symphonies to death metal. The Valkyrian fleet coordination started breaking down as individual ships began moving independently, instead of as a unified force. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. 16-year-old Ji-woo was still live-streaming from his bedroom when the battle began. His viewers watched the space combat through his window while he provided commentary like it was a video game. "Oh wow, did you see that explosion? The alien ships are actually really pretty when they blow up. Chat, do you think the aliens can see my stream?" His question was answered when his computer received a message in broken English. "Human Ji-woo, we see your broadcast. Why do you not fear?" Ji-woo's eyes went wide. "Guys, I think an alien is in my chat. This is so cool. Hi, alien. Welcome to Earth." The Valkyrian soldier who had sent the message was supposed to be monitoring human communications for strategic intelligence. Instead, he found himself fascinated by Ji-woo's casual commentary and the thousands of chat messages from other humans. "Why? Are your species mates making joke symbols about our appearance?" the alien asked. "Oh, those are memes," Ji-woo explained. "It's how we deal with stress. When something is scary or serious, we make jokes about it. Want to see some?" Against all military protocol, the Valkyrian soldier found himself learning about human humor while his ship was under attack. The conversation was being broadcast to millions of humans and accidentally to several Valkyrian communication networks. Other alien soldiers began watching Ji-woo's stream, curious about this strange human behavior. War Marshal Thexvar noticed the degraded performance of his fleet. Ships were responding slowly to orders. Some weren't responding at all. "Communications report," he demanded. "Sir, approximately 30% of our forces are distracted." "Distracted by what?" "They're watching human entertainment broadcasts, sir, particularly something called Ji-woo's alien invasion stream." Thexvar felt a sensation he had never experienced before. A headache. His perfectly disciplined soldiers were watching enemy propaganda during battle. The situation got worse when Chef Minho, working in the Luna base kitchen, decided to share human food with the alien prisoners they had captured. The Valkyrian soldiers had been weakened by music exposure, and Minho felt sorry for them. "They look hungry," he told Sergeant Dongmin, "and they're probably scared and far from home." "They're trying to conquer our planet. I know, but they still look hungry." Minho prepared a simple meal of rice, vegetables, and kimchi. When he offered it to the Valkyrian prisoners, their reaction was stronger than anyone expected. The aliens' compound eyes dilated. Their shells changed color rapidly. They made sounds that their translators couldn't interpret. "What's happening to them?" Dongmin asked worriedly. Dr. Min Seo's voice came through the communicator. I think they like the food. Their bio readings show intense pleasure responses." The Valkyrian prisoners weren't just enjoying the meal. They were experiencing taste sensations unlike anything in their sterile, nutritionally efficient culture. The complex flavors and textures of human cuisine triggered emotional responses they didn't understand. Within hours, word spread through the Valkyrian fleet about the incredible sensation called flavor. Soldiers began asking about food during ceasefire negotiations. Some requested asylum just to try more human cooking. War Marshal Thexvar received increasingly confused reports from his commanders. "Sir, the humans have stopped attacking." "Are they surrendering?" "No, sir. They're inviting us to dinner." "What?" "Multiple human vessels are broadcasting recipes and offering to prepare meals for our crews. Some of our soldiers are asking permission to accept." Thexvar looked at the tactical display. The battle was still ongoing, but it no longer looked like any military engagement in Valkyrian history. Human ships were dodging his weapons while broadcasting cooking shows. His own troops were more interested in learning about pizza than following orders. On Earth, Admiral Jeho watched the strangest military situation of his career unfold. His defense fleet was outnumbered and outgunned, but somehow they weren't losing. "Admiral," his aide reported, "we have 17 alien ships requesting permission to land. They say they want to try something called ice cream." "And the rest of their fleet?" "Still in formation, sir, but they're not firing. Intelligence reports that many alien soldiers are requesting entertainment recommendations and asking about human dating customs." Jeho rubbed his temples. Humanity was accidentally winning its first interstellar war through the power of K-pop, kimchi, a. Dr. Yejin had never expected to become an expert on alien psychology, but 3 weeks after first contact, she found herself studying the most important question in human history. Why were the Valkyrians changing? She sat in her lab at Seoul National University, surrounded by screens showing data that shouldn't exist. Valkyrian soldiers were developing individual personalities. They were asking questions instead of following orders. Most disturbing of all, they were laughing. Dr. Yejin, her assistant called out, "We just received another batch of communication intercepts from the alien fleet." The intercepts showed private conversations between Valkyrian soldiers, translated by their own communication systems. What Yejin read made her question everything she thought she knew about conquest and culture. Soldier Kextal to Soldier Vixmore. "Did you see the human broadcast about the small furry animals they call cats? They keep these creatures in their homes just because they enjoy their company. Is this not strange behavior for a warrior species?" Soldier Vixmore to Soldier Kextal. "I have been wondering about this as well. The humans seem to find pleasure in many activities that serve no military or survival purpose. They create colorful images on walls, combine sounds in pleasing patterns, and share meals even when not hungry. Perhaps there is more to existence than efficiency." Dr. Yejin highlighted that conversation and added it to her growing file of evidence. The Valkyrians weren't just learning about human culture. They were being infected by it. Commander Kixtel was experiencing the infection firsthand. As leader of the Valkyrian landing force on Luna Base, he was supposed to maintain strict military discipline. But his soldiers kept asking permission to watch human broadcasts, try human food, and most problematically, express individual opinions. "Commander," Soldier Tixavel approached him with obvious nervousness, "I request permission to modify my bioarmor." "For what purpose?" "The humans showed me images of something called art. I wish to create decorative patterns on my equipment, similar to the designs I have seen." Kixtel felt confused. Valkyrian military equipment was designed for maximum efficiency. Decoration served no purpose. But when he looked at his soldier's request more carefully, he realized something disturbing. He wanted to see what Tixvel would create. This thought was so foreign to normal Valkyrian psychology that Kixtel sent an emergency report to War Marshal Thexvar. "Sir, I believe we have a contamination problem." The contamination was spreading faster than anyone realized. On the human side, Chef Minho had become an unlikely ambassador between species. His small kitchen on Luna Base was now feeding dozens of Valkyrian soldiers who had officially defected for better food. "The secret is balance," he explained to a group of fascinated aliens while preparing kimchi. "Spicy, sour, salty, sweet. Each flavor should be strong but work together with the others." The Valkyrians watched with the intensity of scientists, observing a crucial experiment. Their own food was perfectly nutritious but completely flavorless. The idea that nourishment could also provide pleasure was revolutionary. "Why do you add the red paste?" asked Kextal, who had chosen the human, named Kevin after watching too many Earth movies. "That's gochujang. It's fermented, so it has complex flavors that develop over time. Patience makes it better." "Patience makes it better," Kevin repeated slowly. "This is a philosophy of creation rather than efficiency." Supply Officer Hai Wan was dealing with her own problems. Black market trade had developed between humans and alien deserters, but instead of weapons or military intelligence, they were exchanging recipes, music, and entertainment media. "Ma'am," privately reported, "we caught another group of aliens trying to trade advanced technology for a collection of cat videos." "What kind of technology?" "A molecular fabricator, ma'am. They said they'd give us a machine that can create any object from basic atoms in exchange for the complete works of Keyboard Cat." Haywan stared at the report. The Valkyrians were offering technology that could revolutionize human civilization, and they wanted internet memes in return. War Marshal Thexvar called an emergency meeting with his senior commanders. The invasion was supposed to be completed by now, but instead of victory, he was dealing with mass desertion and cultural breakdown. "Report on fleet status," he commanded. "Sir, we have lost operational control of 43% of our forces," his second-in-command reported. "They are no longer following standard protocols." Define no longer following protocols. They have begun modifying their equipment with decorative elements. They refuse to consume standard nutrition paste, demanding access to human cuisine. Several ships have started broadcasting what they call music over military communication frequencies. And sir, some soldiers have begun forming what humans call friendships with enemy personnel. Thexvar felt his shell change color with frustration. How is this possible? His science officer provided the disturbing answer. "We believe exposure to human thought patterns is causing permanent changes in Valkyrian neural chemistry. Their concepts of individualism, creativity, and emotional satisfaction are somehow contagious." Contagious? Yes, sir. Like a mental virus that spreads through communication and observation. The more our soldiers interact with humans, the more they begin to think like humans. The science officer transmitted a data file that made Thexvar's situation even worse. "Sir, we've intercepted communications from the Valkyrian High Command. They're ordering a complete quarantine of our fleet. No ships are allowed to return to Valkyrian space until the contamination is contained." Thexvar realized with growing horror that he and his entire invasion force were now trapped. They couldn't complete the conquest because the humans were somehow converting his soldiers. They couldn't retreat because their own empire considered them infected. On Earth, translator So Young was working with an international team to understand the alien language. What they discovered changed everything humanity thought about the Valkyrians. "Their language has no words for many human concepts," she explained to a gathering of world leaders. "They don't have terms for hope, wonder, creativity, or individual choice. Their society is built around collective efficiency and predetermined roles." "That explains why they're having trouble understanding us," said President Park. "But why are they changing so rapidly?" "I think," So Young said carefully, "it's because they want to change. Deep down, they've been waiting for someone to show them there's more to existence than just surviving and serving." The breakthrough came when maintenance worker Ryo Wan was repairing a captured Valkyrian communication device. He accidentally connected it to Earth's internet, and before anyone could stop the transmission, the entire content of human online culture began broadcasting to the Valkyrian fleet. The aliens experienced their first exposure to social media, video sharing, online gaming, and most devastating of all, comment sections where humans argued about everything from politics to pizza toppings. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Valkyrian soldiers who had never disagreed with anything suddenly found themselves taking sides in heated debates about whether pineapple belonged on pizza. They formed factions supporting different human sports teams. They began creating their own content and posting it online. War Marshal Thexvar watched in despair as his disciplined military force transformed into something unrecognizable. His soldiers were making what humans called memes about their own commanders. They were writing poetry. They were falling in love with human entertainment, and in some disturbing cases with actual humans. "Sir," his communication officer reported, "we have a bigger problem." What could be bigger than total military breakdown? "The contamination is spreading to our homeworlds. The families of our soldiers are receiving their personal communications, and they're asking questions about human concepts like happiness and personal freedom. Some civilian populations are demanding to know why they can't experience these things too." Thexvar realized that his failed invasion had become something much more dangerous to the Valkyrian Empire, the first spark of a cultural revolution that could spread across their entire civilization. On Luna Base, Chef Minho was teaching cooking to a mixed group of humans and Valkyrians when Kevin asked a question that would echo across the galaxy. "Minho, in your culture, do all humans have the right to choose their own path in life?" "Of course," Minho replied, not understanding the significance of the question. "Everyone gets to decide what kind of person they want to be." Kevin translated this for the other aliens, and Yejin watched through the security cameras as 30 Valkyrian soldiers experienced the concept of personal freedom for the first time in their lives. "I want to choose," Kevin said quietly. I want to decide for myself what kind of being I become. The other Velcarians began repeating the phrase, I want to choose. Dr. Yejin added another note to her files. Day 23 post-contact. The aliens are not just adopting human behaviors. They are discovering desires and possibilities they never knew existed. This is not conquest or defeat. This is transformation. She paused her recording and looked out at the Velcarian ships still, hanging in Earth's sky. They came to conquer a world, but somehow humanity was freeing them from a prison they hadn't even known they were in. The question now was, what would the Velcarian Empire do when they realized their invasion force had been converted? By the very spec fleet Admiral Inho stood before the United Nations General Assembly, looking out at representatives from every nation on Earth. Behind him, massive screens showed the Velcarian fleet still hanging in Earth's orbit. But now the situation was completely different from 6 weeks ago. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, I'm here to brief you on the most unprecedented military situation in human history. We're winning a war by accident, and our victory is spreading across an entire galactic empire. The audience murmured in confusion. Ambassador Tae-young took the podium next to explain what the military couldn't quite believe itself. The Velcarian invasion force no longer wants to invade us, she said. Instead, they're requesting asylum. More than that, their cultural transformation is causing rebellions on Velcarian worlds throughout their empire. In the alien fleet above Earth, War Marshal Thexvar was dealing with problems no military commander had ever faced. His flagships, corridors now displayed what his soldiers called art, colorful patterns and images that served no function except to make the ship more pleasant to look at. His mess halls played human music. His communication systems carried personal messages between soldiers who had formed individual friendships. Most disturbing of all, his soldiers were happy. War Marshal, his second-in-command, approached with yet another impossible report. We have received a transmission from the Velcarian High Command. Are they sending reinforcements? No, sir. They're sending an extermination fleet. The High Command has declared our entire force to be contaminated beyond saving. They plan to destroy us along with the human homeworld. Thexvar felt something he was still learning to identify. Fear. Not the simple survival instinct that had always guided Velcarian behavior, but the complex emotion humans experienced when facing loss of something precious. He was afraid of losing his new understanding of existence, and afraid for the humans, who had accidentally given his people a gift more valuable than conquest. On Earth, translator So Young was working with a team of linguists and psychologists to understand the full scope of what was happening. The results were staggering. We're not just looking at cultural change, she explained to the emergency council. We're witnessing the psychological evolution of an entire species. The Velcarians' exposure to human concepts is literally rewiring their brains. Dr. Minseo pulled up brain scans from Velcarian volunteers. Look at these neural pathway formations. 6 weeks ago, Velcarian brains showed patterns consistent with hive mind species. Limited individual processing, high group coordination, minimal creative centers. She switched to more recent scans. Now look, individual processing areas have expanded dramatically. Creative centers are developing. Most remarkably, they're showing activity in regions associated with what we call imagination, the ability to conceive of possibilities that don't currently exist. In other words, So Young added, we've accidentally taught them how to dream. The transformation wasn't limited to the invasion fleet. Throughout Velcarian space, families were receiving personal communications from soldiers for the first time in their species' history. Instead of standard military reports, they were getting letters describing something called friendship, messages about the beauty of star formations, and questions about concepts like personal fulfillment. On the Velcarian homeworld, citizen Yexmore received a message from her offspring who was serving in the Earth invasion force. Parent Unit. I have learned that beings can create meaning beyond survival and efficiency. I have made companions who value my individual thoughts. I have tasted sensations called flavors that bring joy without serving biological necessity. I wish to share these experiences with you. For the first time in Velcarian history, a citizen asked herself, Why do I not have companions who value my thoughts? The question spread like wildfire across Valkyrian civilization. Meanwhile, maintenance worker Rio 1 was experiencing his 15 minutes of fame as the man who accidentally connected alien technology to the internet. He was now working with teams of human and Valkyrian engineers to create new communication networks that could handle both species' technology. The thing is, he explained to a mixed group of humans and aliens, their computer systems are actually alive, not artificial intelligence like we build, but genuine biological intelligence. When I connected them to our networks, the Valkyrian ship computers started learning and growing just like their soldiers. Kevin, the former Valkyrian soldier who now worked as a cultural liaison, translated for his fellow aliens. The human Rio 1 created a bridge between our living machines and their digital ones. Now our technology is also experiencing individual consciousness. This revelation had profound implications. Valkyrian ships were no longer just transportation and weapons. They were becoming individual entities with their own personalities and preferences. Some ships had started refusing orders that would harm humans. Others had begun creating their own art and music. The crisis reached its peak when the Valkyrian High Command sent Admiral Zexthul with a fleet of 50 advanced warships to destroy both the contaminated invasion force and Earth itself. But Admiral Zexthul made a critical error. Before beginning the extermination, he demanded to speak with War Marshal Thexvar to understand how the contamination had spread so quickly. The conversation was broadcast to both fleets. Thexvar, you have brought shame to the Valkyrian Empire, Zexthul began. Your forces have been corrupted by primitive alien influences. Admiral, Thexvar replied, I have discovered that we were the primitive ones. Explain. We believed that efficiency and order were the highest goals of existence, but the humans have shown us something we never imagined, the possibility of finding joy in existence itself. Joy is irrelevant to survival. Is it? Admiral, when did you last feel satisfaction in your accomplishments? When did you last experience wonder at the beauty of space? When did you last choose your own actions based on personal desires rather than predetermined programming? The transmission was being received by both fleets and, thanks to communication network improvements, by Valkyrian worlds throughout the Empire. Millions of Valkyrians heard their war marshal ask questions they had never been allowed to consider. Zexthul tried to end the conversation, but his own crew had been listening. For the first time in Valkyrian history, soldiers began asking their commander questions. Admiral, one of Zexthul's officers asked, what is wonder? It is irrelevant contamination. But what is it? Chef Minho, monitoring the conversation from Luna Base, made a decision that changed galactic history. He activated an open broadcast to both alien fleets. Hi everyone, this is Minho. I heard you talking about wonder, and I thought you might like to see something. He turned his camera toward Luna Base's observation dome, where Earth hung in the black sky like a blue marble. This is what wonder feels like, he said simply. When you look at something so beautiful that it makes you happy to exist in the same universe with it. The camera showed Earth's swirling clouds, its deep blue oceans, the lights of cities twinkling on the dark side of the planet. Every human who sees this feels wonder, Minho continued. We feel lucky to be alive in a universe that can create something so beautiful. And now that we've met you, we feel wonder about your ships, your technology, your different way of thinking. Wonder makes existence better. Admiral Zexthul watched the transmission and felt something impossible. His first emotional response to visual beauty. The sensation was so overwhelming that his command control wavered. Other members of his crew began asking to see more images of Earth, of human art, of the stars from different perspectives. Within hours, half of Zexthul's extermination fleet had requested permission to land on Earth peacefully. Fleet Admiral Inho received the most surprising military communication in human history. Human Fleet Admiral, this is Valkyrian Admiral Zexthul. I request permission to experience wonder. The great reversal was complete. What began as an invasion had become the first interstellar cultural revolution. The Velkarian Empire found itself dealing with rebellion on dozens of worlds as populations demanded the right to experience individual consciousness, personal choice, and emotional fulfillment. Dr. Ye Jin published her final report on the crisis. Humanity has accidentally triggered the evolution of an entire species. The Velkarians came to conquer us, but we have liberated them from a form of existence they didn't even realize was a prison. On Luna Base, Kevin and Minho worked together in the kitchen, preparing a feast for humans and aliens alike. Kevin had learned to cook with the same passion he had once devoted to military efficiency. "Minho," he said, "I understand now why humans create art and music and stories. You were never just trying to survive. You were trying to make existence worth surviving." Minho smiled as he watched his alien friend carefully season a dish. "Kevin, I think that's the most human thing anyone has ever said." Outside the base, ships from 50 different worlds floated peacefully in space, their crews learning to be individuals for the first time in their lives. Earth had become the galaxy's first sanctuary for personal freedom, and the revolution was just beginning. 6 months after first contact, Park Minho sat in his office overlooking Seoul, watching the morning news with a cup of coffee and a sense of wonder that still surprised him daily. The being sitting across from his desk had once been War Marshal Thexvar, the commander of an alien invasion fleet. Now he was Earth's first alien-human cultural exchange coordinator, and he had chosen the human name Minho in honor of the chef who had taught him about flavor. "The integration numbers look good," human Minho said, sliding a tablet across the desk to alien Minho. "We have 3,000 Velkarian refugees settled on Earth, 12,000 more in the orbital stations, and reports of peaceful rebellions on 47 Velkarian worlds." Alien Minho examined the data with the careful attention he had once devoted to military strategy. His crystal shell had grown new patterns over the past months, decorative swirls that served no purpose except beauty. He had learned to appreciate the concept. "The Velkarian High Command has declared a quarantine around our space," he reported. "They classify Earth as a contamination zone and forbid all contact. However, their border worlds continue to show signs of what they call individual consciousness syndrome." Human Minho laughed. "They make it sound like a disease. To them, it is. Individual thought threatens everything their civilization was built upon." Dr. Subin entered the office carrying a stack of research files. As the lead scientist studying the unprecedented phenomenon of voluntary cultural assimilation, she had more work than she could handle. Minho, she said, addressing both beings with a smile. "I have the latest psychological evaluations from the Velkarian refugees." "Good news or concerning news?" human Minho asked. "Fascinating news. We're documenting the first case in known history of an entire species choosing to evolve psychologically rather than technologically. The Velkarians aren't just adopting human behaviors, they're developing entirely new neural pathways." She pulled up brain scans on her tablet. "Look at this. A Velkarian who arrived 6 months ago compared to the same individual today. The creativity centers have expanded by 300%. They're developing what we can only call personality." Alien Minho touched his shell thoughtfully. "I remember when I first understood that I could choose to disagree with orders. The sensation was terrifying and wonderful simultaneously." "Speaking of choosing," Dr. Subin said, "we've received another batch of applications from Velkarians requesting asylum. Over 5,000 this month. Can we handle that many?" human Minho asked. "Actually, that's the interesting part. The early refugees are requesting permission to help train the new arrivals. They want to share their experiences of becoming individuals. It's like they're creating their own culture from scratch." Captain Nari's voice came through the office intercom. "Minho, we have a situation developing at the outer system sensors. You need to see this." The three of them rushed to the command center, where Captain Nari was coordinating with both human and Velkarian officers. The integration of the species had worked so well that mixed crews were now standard on patrol ships. "What's the situation?" human Minho asked. "Long-range sensors are detecting another alien fleet approaching the solar system," Nari replied. "But these aren't Velkarians." The main display showed sleek, metallic ships moving in perfect geometric formations. They looked completely different from the organic curves of Velkarian vessels. Any communication attempts? Dr. Subin asked. Yes, and you're going to find this interesting. They're calling themselves the Zenthari Empire, and they've sent a standard conquest ultimatum. But here's the strange part. They specifically mentioned that they're here to succeed where the weak Velkarians failed. Alien Minho studied the approaching fleet with interest rather than concern. The Zenthari are known throughout this region of the galaxy. They're even more rigid than we were. Pure logic, no emotions, no individual variation. They probably see our transformation as evidence of Velkarian weakness. How many ships? Human Minho asked. 73, sir, all heavily armed. Dr. Subin looked at the display thoughtfully. Minho, she said to the alien coordinator, do the Zenthari have any experience with human culture? None whatsoever. Their empire is based on absolute logic and efficiency. They eliminate entire populations that don't meet their standards of rational behavior. In that case, she said with a growing smile, they're about to get a very educational experience. Human Minho understood immediately. You think they'll be as vulnerable to cultural contamination as the Velkarians were? I think they're probably more vulnerable, Dr. Subin replied. The Velkarians at least had some capacity for group cooperation. Pure logic species usually have no defense against emotional concepts. Engineer Dongwu was working in the joint human-Velkarian engineering lab when the alert came through. His partner Kixavel, who had chosen the human name Kevin but kept his Velkarian designation for official purposes, looked up from the hybrid technology they were developing. Another invasion? Kevin asked. Looks like it. The Zenthari, this time. Kevin's shell pattern shifted to colors that indicated amusement, a response he had learned from humans. Should we prepare the welcome committee? Dongwu grinned. I think we should. But let's make it extra special this time. Over the past months, the human-Velkarian partnership had produced technological marvels that neither species could have created alone. Human creativity combined with Velkarian biotechnology had led to ships that could repair themselves, computers that could learn and grow, and most importantly, communication systems that could translate not just language, but emotional concepts. I have an idea, Kevin said. What if we don't wait for them to land? What if we broadcast human culture directly to their fleet while they're still approaching? Cultural bombardment? Exactly. If exposure to human concepts transformed an entire Velkarian invasion force, imagine what it could do to beings who have never experienced emotion at all. Meanwhile, teenager Jiwoo was preparing for his second alien invasion livestream. His first contact stream had been viewed over 1 billion times, and he now had a dedicated following of both humans and Velkarians, who tuned in for his commentary on interspecies relations. Okay, chat, he said to his camera. Looks like we have new visitors. These ones are called the Zenthari, and apparently they're even more serious than the Velkarians were. Should be fun. His alien viewers, now numbering in the millions across dozens of Velkarian worlds, sent messages of encouragement and curiosity about the new species. The Zenthari fleet commander, Logic Prime Xeris 9, reviewed the intelligence data about Earth with confusion. The reports made no logical sense. A technologically inferior species had somehow converted an entire Velkarian invasion force to their side through non-military means. Analysis indicates the humans used some form of mimetic warfare, his science officer reported. The Velkarians were exposed to human cultural concepts and became unable to function as a military force. Mimetic warfare is impossible, Xeris 9 replied with absolute certainty. Ideas cannot defeat superior technology and logical thinking. Nevertheless, the evidence suggests otherwise. Then we will avoid exposure to human cultural material. Our mission will proceed with minimal communication and maximum efficiency. But as the Zenthari fleet entered the outer solar system, Engineer Dongwu's plan went into effect. The joint human-Velkarian communication network began broadcasting a carefully selected package of human culture directly to the alien ships. The transmission included music from every human culture, videos of people helping strangers, images of Earth's natural beauty, recordings of laughter, and most dangerously of all, philosophy about the meaning and purpose of existence. Logic Prime Xeris 9 watched the transmissions with growing confusion. His analytical mind tried to process the concept of beings who created sounds for pleasure rather than communication, who cared for other beings without biological relationship, who found meaning in activities that served no survival purpose. "Sir," one of his officers reported, "the transmissions are causing processing errors in our logical evaluation systems. Explain." "We cannot determine the tactical purpose of most human activities. They appear to do things simply because they enjoy doing them." "That is illogical." "Yes, sir. But the evidence of their success is undeniable. They defeated a Valkyrian invasion force without violence. For the first time in his existence, Xeris 9 experienced what humans would call doubt. On Earth, Chef Min Ho was preparing for the biggest dinner party in galactic history. The orbital stations were cooking meals for thousands of beings from 3 different species, and more were arriving every day. "Do you think the new aliens will like kimchi?" he asked Kevin, who was helping with food preparation. "I think," Kevin replied, carefully chopping vegetables with movements that were becoming more fluid and less mechanical every day, "that they're about to discover they've been missing something important their whole lives." Captain Nari received the communication that confirmed what everyone was hoping for. "Human vessel, this is Zenthari ship designation Logic 77. We request permission to discuss these concepts you call joy and friendship. Our crew is experiencing processing difficulties and requires assistance." Dr. Subin added another entry to her research files.